This video will be Chapter 6, and we're going to go over lesson plans on the first level. Some of our objectives for this will be we're going to look at and describe the components of learning objectives. We'll talk about and describe the parts of a lesson plan. And then we're going to look at the four-step method of instruction. Preparation for instruction, this whole process. And then we'll describe the lesson plan adaptation process for the fire service instructor at the level 1. Skills objectives, we're going to demonstrate the four-step method of instruction, review a lesson plan and identify the adaptations needed, and then we'll adapt a lesson plan so that it both meets the needs of the students and that it ensures that learning objectives are met. So as instructors, you're going to spend hours planning and preparing for a class. It's not as easy as firing up a PowerPoint that someone has pre-made and then reading those bullet points off of that slide. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it. And it's not only knowing the material, but it is knowing what's on the slide and being able to expand upon those reminders, as I call them, that are written on each slide if you're using a PowerPoint. There are times that we don't use PowerPoint. We may have a visual slide that's projected, and probably 90% of what we're talking about is going to be coming from our experience, and it may be coming from the text or the didactic material, but we're not running through a bunch of slides. So we have to keep that in mind, that although there are good visual aids, and PowerPoint and other programs like it are very good and useful tools, that's not all of what the instruction is about. So there's a lot of details that we address in this. What are the expected outcomes? What's our desired outcome? What do we want to happen with the class? How much time do we have to spend on the class? How much class time do we have? How many students will be in attendance? And this is something that we need to know, a round number, to help us prepare. Are there prerequisites to this instruction or this class? So are there certain things or certain criteria that the students need to meet prior to the start of a particular class? Are training aids and equipment needed? Are you going to do skills or breakout sessions where there may be additional instructors needed, there may be additional materials needed, whether that be printed materials or equipment, in order to have a skill session? Any training aids or equipment in that order? In what order will the material be presented? So we do need a balanced order and way to present the material. Will the delivery schedule be affected by the availability of any of those resources? And this is something that we get into. Oftentimes we can prearrange for these resources, but always plan for what I call a plan B. Always plan for something not going as according to plan, and you have to have a backup plan in thought and in motion. All information is compiled into the lesson plan, which your lesson plan is your detailed guide that you're going to use to prepare and to deliver your instruction. So as you're preparing and you're putting together your lesson plan, this is where you are writing down all the parts and the pieces of the program, of the material that you're going to deliver and how you're going to deliver it, and listed in there the materials and the things that you may need as well as additional instructors, equipment, so on and so forth. So it needs to be well prepared, and the lesson plan increases the quality of our student learning. In the instructor one, we use lesson plans that are already been developed, and whether that's been developed by a level 2 or a level 3 instructor, or whether that is a curriculum that we have purchased to use, then level 2s are able to not only use those already developed course material and curriculums, but they are able to and trained to develop their own lesson plans from start to finish. Why do we use a lesson plan? We know that lesson plans are important. This is our go-to tool. Not only is it the pre-written plan of events that we can go to, we get and see the chronological order as it's been planned out. We can see whether or not we need to change that around for the audience that we're dealing with currently. The instruction without a lesson plan is like driving a foreign car in a foreign country without a map, and it could be very, very confusing. The goal, one, is to reach our destination. We want to reach our students with the information and the material, and we want to present that in such a way that the students will take away the most that they possibly can. So our learning objectives are our destination. Without a lesson plan with these objectives, you may not even know what the destination is. So in your plan, it outlines the destination. We come up with our learning objectives and what the plan that we want to meet, and then we give ourselves a path in order to meet that. When a class is taught multiple times by different instructors, a lesson plan ensures that all students will receive the same material or the same information. Basically, your lesson plan documents what was taught, and a new instructor can use an existing lesson plan to achieve the same learning objectives. All of this helps us to keep a consistency about the material that we are to deliver. Now, one thing that you will find is the basis of the material being the same, and we maintain and we keep that consistency, but each individual instructor will be able to bring some different things as an individual to the table. You may have one instructor that is very strong in certain areas, whereas someone else may not be strong in that area, but they may be have experience and be stronger in a different area. So there's always something to take away from each individual as well as what's in the plan. We'll start with learning objectives, and this is where we begin to plan by identifying the desired outcome or objective. So we think of and we write down, what do we really want to come out of this class? What's going to be our desired outcome? So we define it as a goal achieved by attaining a skill, knowledge, or both, and that can be observed or it can be measured. Sometimes we call performance outcomes or behavioral type outcomes. If students achieve the learning objectives, they achieve the desired outcome of the class, if you will. A terminal objective is a broader outcome that requires the learner to have a specific set of skills or knowledge base after a learning process. An enabling objective is an intermediate objective, and it is usually part of a series of objectives that direct instructors on what they need to instruct and what the learners will learn to accomplish the terminal objectives. You can think of it as in individual tasks. Um, so collective task, the broad, the big determinal picture, is made up of individual tasks. So we may have many of these small skills and objective and knowledge base uh, points of interest that we need to know about a subject. Then it all comes together in the terminal objective. Uh, an example, forcible entry. We want you to be able to force the broad. We want you to be able to force any inward or outward swinging door. And with that, there's inward swinging, there's outward swinging, there's doors with a nailed on stop, without a nailed on stop. The list goes on. So there's many different tasks within that to get us to that broad point. Components of your learning objective. Many methods exist for writing learning objectives. ABCD method is a common method. This is, we talk about the who, what, where, and how much. And we want to, using this acronym just kind of jogs your memory, and it helps you remember the path that we're taking. The who is our audience. Who are we writing these objectives for? And the next is the what, or the behavior. What's our outcome? What's our desired outcome with this objective? The how is the condition. How are we going to do this? What are we going to use in order to come to this end? And then the next is how much, or to what degree are we going to take it? So we'll start with our audience. This describes the who that our students are. Fire service learning objectives often use specific terms, and this could be firefighter trainees, entry-level firefighters that are still in the training stage. Also, a term could be used as cadet. And moving along the line, we may have an audience of fire officers, which may be more experienced personnel and have achieved the officer rank. And then simply could be as students, and oftentimes just we think of our group of firefighters as students. Next is behavior. Must be observable or a measurable action. Don't use words such as know or understand for the behavior. Use words for actions you can see and measure, such as state, describe, or identify. The terms cognitive or psychomotor objectives are applied in a properly formatted objective. We want to blend presentation styles to enhance the learning environment whenever possible, and enhance learning by appealing to multiple senses and allowing for many application opportunities. The condition, this describes the situation in which a student will perform a behavior. Specific equipment or resources are given to the student. Personal protective clothing or other safety items that are required when performing the behavior. And physical location or circumstances for performing that behavior. To what degree, with what percentage of completion is the student expected to perform? Total mastery would be 100% completion. Many times objectives are expected to be learned to a passing rate for written exams can be somewhere in the realm of 70 to 80%. We can also use time limits as well. What are you going to do in a certain time limit? And with skills, to what degree, there are certain skills that we realize we're not going to reach the mastery level immediately. It's going to take a lot more practice. And so when it comes to skill sessions, this is why we break them down and we do step by step, and there's an expectation within each of those levels and each of those steps. Using the ABCD method, the objectives do not need to contain all ABCD parts. Often is shortened because one or more of the elements are assumed to already be known. And with your audience and your condition, may be listed once at the top of all the objectives, or it may not be listed at all. The degree commonly omitted, the assumption that the degree will be determined by a testing method. So with skills, it could be the successful completion at real time or real speed within so many attempts. With written material or didactic material, it could be that you have achieved a certain score, percentage, of score on a quiz or an exam. Shortened method only when we are clear or clearly stated elsewhere in the lesson plan. Never omit behavior components. So you want to stick with the plan, and you don't want to just cut pieces out of it that are necessary. All four elements are essential in the construction of a terminal objective. The components inform the students of what will be taught. It informs the students of the method of evaluation and the resources consulted for the information that is presented. And in most cases, we're going to have material will be delivered in one fashion. There may be skills driven material with it, and the end is you can, for an example, you complete all checkoffs successfully in real time, meeting the requirements, and you pass the written exam to a certain level. Enabling objectives may assume certain points previously stated in the main objective as well. This could restate the audience, the degree, and the references. Each enabling objective allows the student to meet the intent or goal of the terminal objective. Next, we're going to talk about parts of a lesson plan. There's many different styles and formats. Lesson plan should always include certain components, though, required for understanding and following the lesson plan. So the title or the topic is what describes the lesson plan, what it is about basically. It should help determine whether the lesson plan contains information about the topic you are planning to teach. It may be used to highlight or preview the content of the lesson plan package, and it may serve as a summary or contents and prepare the instructor for the class. Here's a sample of a cover sheet for a lesson plan. Like I said, there's many different ones out there. A lot of curriculum you buy, they keep it pretty simple and understandable. Nothing fancy about it, and it states the criteria, the title, and the learning parts of it. Level of instruction, the students must be able to understand the instructional material itself. And so we got to ensure the plan is written at the appropriate level for the students. If we were using a pre-made plan, then we want to ensure that we pick the plan that is appropriate for the level of students, or that it is customizable to suit those needs. The level often corresponds with the NFPA standards, and you'll see that stated a lot in the fire service. In the objectives, it'll have the NFPA standards will be quoted along with the material. It may be indicated by labels such as beginner, intermediate, and or advanced as well. And well-made lesson plans can be sectioned off into this and broken down by beginner, intermediate, and advanced, for an example. And that will give us as instructors the option of, okay, now if we know that we are basically dealing with the intermediate group, for an example, then we know that we can pick just that part of the lesson plan, if you will, and utilize it. And again, writing out lesson plans it's lengthy and it takes time. Once they're written and stored, whether that be electronically or in a physical file or both, you have those that you can look back on. And especially for the new instructor that is looking for material that might not necessarily have the time to write out a full plan as well. The level of instruction also identifies any prerequisites that may be necessary for the class, and there are certainly some classes out there like that. One good example in the fire service is the National Incident Management System. When you get into the command staff and the upper levels, those classes are 40-hour, 20 to 40-hour classes, and they do require you to have the basic material already mastered. And so you may have to take 1, 2, or 3 prerequisite classes before you get to the upper classes. So a prerequisite is a condition that must be met before the student is permitted to then receive further instruction in that area or that topic. This could be another class. It could be the achievement of a certification. In some cases, in some departments, it may be the achievement of certain rank. Objectives and outcomes. This is the backbone or the spine of your lesson plan. All lesson plans must have the learning objectives. Many methods for determining and listing learning objectives. The instructor must understand these objectives before presenting them to the students. Again, it's something you don't want to jump into material that you're not familiar with, objectives that you're not familiar without viewing that and understanding that you don't want to present that material without that. So there are a lot of instructors out there that have expertise in certain areas and are very good will ask another instructor to assist. They may not know or have the exact expertise. They may just only possess the base knowledge. And so sometimes studying the lesson plan, digging deep into the text, if you will, reviewing material. I find myself often having to review materials or certain parts of materials just for this reason. The Fire Service Instructor 2 will use JPRs to develop the learning objectives and hopefully is using the ABCD format or order. JPRs are skills sheets. This gives you the step-by-step method for each of our skills. In Fire Instructor 3s will write the course objectives. 2s can also write objectives. Usually they're doing this based on the JPRs. Instructional materials that may be needed. Most lesson plans require some type of instructional materials. They're designed to help present lesson plans to the students. So this could be audio-visual aids such as PowerPoint, could be flip charts, overhead projection. It could be audio-visual aids such as video, again through PowerPoint or the computer. I think maybe we might be still using DVDs. I think VHS tapes are out now. Most is digital format. Handouts, pictures, diagrams, or other models may also be instructional materials that we use. Handouts are quite common, especially handouts of the slides with the note lines so that they will have something to take notes on if they didn't bring it. And we may have other pictures, slideshows. One of the things that a lot of instructors like to do is to show slideshows at break time of a lot of material, pictures of a lot of material that pertains to the instruction and the objectives that we're delivering. And there may be additional supplies involved as well. It could be equipment. It could be, it could be demonstration by co-instructors as well. A lot of it may be equipment that is show and tell. An example, when we do honor guard classes, we will have our Class A uniforms ready, pressed. One will be wearing them. Usually the lead instructor will wear theirs while they're teaching or parts of it, but we'll have everything else there, from maybe different types of uniforms that are worn or shoes or badges, so on and so forth. Your outline of the lesson, basically this is the main body of the lesson plan. It should contain the four main elements: preparation, presentation, application of, and then evaluation. Each area fulfills a specific purpose in the delivery of the instruction. Lesson plans often contain only an outline of information. The instructors may not be experts in the topic, but they may need additional references and or resources. So this is what I was talking about earlier. If we may not be an expert in a particular topic, we know the base material, then we may need to use additional references and resources and materials to help us out to stay up to par in these areas. May contain names of books, websites, or other experts. Usually when I write one out, there'll be other material that you can research out, whether that be websites, good sources of information. Through the internet's a great thing, but you also may have personal sources again, and there may be books that were referenced or used as well. Oftentimes we do this in rescue training. We will reference the rope rescue manuals that a lot of our objectives or skill-based objectives came from. This will allow the validity of the lesson plan to be then verified. So it's okay, where did you get these objectives? Well, we went back and we referenced this text, and this text, and that's how and where we came up with our objectives. Summarization of the lesson and in the lesson plan. This reviews and then reinforces basically the main points of the lesson plan, and it will allow the instructor to enhance application step by asking the summary questions and on those key points. And it is a good idea to summarize. You can summarize as you go along. You can summarize after each component of each lesson, and then ultimately at the end of the overall class. Assignments. Lesson plans will often contain the assignments. This could be homework type assignments or exercises, and this could allow our students to explore or apply other material. And so we need to be prepared to explain due dates with assignments, the criteria with assignments, the method for submission, and exactly what that grading criteria may be. In some classes, especially classes that last more than a day or more than a few hours, you're going to have some type of assignments with it. Some assignments can be done within the classroom setting, given the proper amount of time to complete these exercises. Often the time, these type assignments are what we call group exercises. And this would be where you have an objective that the group needs to meet within a certain time period. They're allowed to work during this time period as the instructor and co-instructors will intermingle and answer questions and kind of guide the groups, if you will. And then we will come to a summary time where each group will present what they have come up with. Four-step method of instruction. The method of instruction most commonly used in the fire service is this four-step method, and it is the combination of the preparation, then the presentation, the application, and then the evaluation process. Under the preparation phase, which is we've been talking about, this is where the instructor prepares the students to learn by identifying the topic, coming up with the intended outcomes, the objectives, choosing the right lesson plan, or writing the right lesson plan. Presentation is where the content is usually organized into the outline form that supports an understanding of the learning objectives. This is then verified by the presentation techniques that should be used to keep the students interested and to learning to the maximum. Application is where the instructor applies the presenting materials as it relates to the student's understandings. Often the fire service instructor will ask questions of the student or ask the students to practice the skill that's being taught. This step also allows the instructor to do a progress check or a spot check on the students and to identify any learning issues. Under the evaluation phase, this is the student's understanding of the material, and it is evaluated through either written exams or practical type skills sessions. So preparation prepares or motivates our students to learn. It will provide information that explains why students will benefit from the class. The class may count towards required hours of training, for an example. The class may provide a desired certification, an official certification. The class may increase the student's knowledge of the subjects, which we certainly hope that in preparation that in some form that we will increase the student's knowledge, even if they have prior knowledge of the subject matter. As an instructor one, preparation gains, we're there to gain the student's attention and then prepare the students to learn. Adult learners like to learn quickly how the class materials are going to affect them. Will it make them safer or more knowledgeable about their job? Will it improve their efficiency on the fire ground? Or will it make the students better leaders? Level 2 instructors develop the lesson plan and they include these preparation points. Safety and survival related information as an example. Other examples of explanations of how the material will help each student with their job. The second step is presentation. The actual presentation of the lesson plan. The lecture could be lead discussions, the use of audio visual aids, and the question and answer time with our students. The lesson plan contains the outline of the information that is to be presented. Notes will indicate use of teaching aids, when to take breaks, or where to get more information if needed. Our third step is the application. This is where the students will be able to apply new knowledge. A lot of times with the fire service, this is through practice skills. And when we set up our skills stations, we do so and we walk through them in step-by-step method. And we allow students to make mistakes, but when they do make mistakes, we quickly correct because a lot of our skill-based training is muscle memory. We're forming muscle memory, and we do not want our firefighters to repeat mistakes and to train their bodies to do an improper technique. Retry skills that's necessary. So there should be opportunity that's built in our skills stations to where our personnel can practice more than once. For instructors, we provide the direction and the support of these skills or this application process. We ensure that the safety rules are followed as well. So your instructors are going to be your safety officers during this process. The lesson plan lists the activities or the assignments that the students are to perform. And the fire service often requires skill sheets for evaluation. So these skill sheets have that step-by-step breakdown of each skill. And when we demonstrate, the first time we demonstrate, we go step by step in a slow manner. Then we will speed it up slightly faster the second time, and the last demonstration time will be at full speed without the word and step-by-step explanation. This ensures that students progress along with the lesson plan, and it allows the students to actively participate and remain engaged. The last step is evaluation. This ensures students correctly acquire the knowledge and the skills. That means that it will correctly measure that we have achieved our objectives. Maybe written test, or it could be a skill performance test as well, or a combination of both. Students must demonstrate competency without assistance. All right, so this is an on your own thing. It's not a you have help from fellow students or instructors. The lesson plan indicates the evaluation method and the procedures for performing that evaluation. Instructional preparation. Once we have learned our lesson plan, the instructional preparation then begins. Many questions need to be answered. Use the information contained in the lesson plan as a guide. Student preparation. Come to class prepared, ready to learn with textbooks, notebooks, and writing materials. Review the classroom or drill ground rules. For the instructor, we're going to monitor the preparedness of the students, and we may enhance their readiness to learn by providing class information and objectives ahead of time. Usually, if we're delivering materials, say at a fire school, for instance, a lot of this prerequisite and objective driven material will be in the description of the class, and written within that, oftentimes we will write the expectations for our students' preparation. We will tell them be prepared to take notes, have your complete PPE with you for skill sessions, so on and so forth. Skill organization. We organize our class planning timeline, identify the time that is available to plan and prepare, usually from when the lesson plan is identified until the day the class is scheduled. And it is always a good idea as an instructor to give yourself plenty of time to prepare. Identify the milestones that we need to accomplish, and prior to class, try to have all these things ironed out. It's not that you won't have things happen and things come up at short notice, but it shouldn't just throw you completely off guard. You should be prepared enough to where you have a plan or a speculation that of a plan that you can drive forward with your class. With skills organization, we want to obtain the equipment and the materials to properly and safely do the skill or perform the skill. This may mean reservation of classrooms and other areas, even outside areas, to make this happen. And we definitely want to preview any of our audio visual aids. Even if you've taught a class many, many times, it's a good idea to walk through your visual aids, read the lesson plan. I can't tell you enough. You will forget things, especially if you've done a class and then over and over and over and over you've done it, and then the next thing you know, you go 3 months without doing that class, and you'll leave things out. You'll miss important things if you don't review that lesson plan. Procuring instructional materials and equipment. This is the job of the lead instructor. You can delegate things out, but remember the ultimate responsibility is of the lead instructor. Methods for obtaining materials and equipment differ. You need to know how, you need to know the who, what, where, and when of that in your area. Instructors may need to contact personnel, maybe for reasonable purchasing of materials. It could be for the use of certain buildings, properties, or equipment. There may be equipment checkout processes. If you don't own your own computer or projector, there may be, your department may require you to check out and turn back in equipment. Make sure that you understand how to use the equipment and how to troubleshoot any problems before class begins. So be very familiar with the equipment that you're using. Sometimes we get eager, we get new equipment in and we really haven't had enough time to learn the equipment and learn how to troubleshoot it, and we can end up wasting or spending more time when we encounter problems with things like that than we actually do meeting our objectives. And that's certainly something that we want to avoid. Preparing to instruct. Most important part of the instructional prep is preparing for the actual delivery of the lesson plan. Be familiar with the information in the lesson plan. Again, read through the lesson plan. If you have to go back and read through a chapter or 2 or 3 in a textbook to refresh yourself, please do so ahead of time. If necessary, consult the references in the research topic even further. And this is something that nowadays there's no excuse for not doing this. We have the internet, we have Google, we can go through and we can research and we can find out a lot of reliable information on our topics that's not already there. Practice using any technology. If you're using tablets, if you're using smartphones, if you're using projectors, know how that projector works. If you are given a classroom that already has a projector and a computer, or you're using your computer with another projector, arrive early enough to make sure that you have all of that ironed out, you know how to use it, and it's ready to go. Always rehearse the presentation. You should not see material for the first time during class. This is a big no-no. This will get you in trouble. The students know it, they will recognize it, and they'll get you every time with it. Understand the information that is being delivered, and adapt to particular needs of the class. Realize that yes, you are using a lesson plan, but understand that lesson plan is a guide. It is not a must step by step that you have to follow. You've got to be flexible enough to make pertinent changes to adapt to your audience and to your class. Adapting versus modifying a lesson plan. Information distinction between a fire service instructor 1 and 2. Your fire service instructor 2 can modify a lesson plan. Lesson plans are rarely implemented exactly as written. What we do have to understand is fire instructor 1s cannot modify plans, but they can deviate and leave certain things in or out to be flexible. NFPA JPRs for the fire service instructor 1. Review instructional materials, given the materials for a specific topic, target audience, learning environment, so that the elements of the lesson plan and the learning environment and resources that need adaptation are identified. So you're going to review it and you're going to identify these things. Adapt a prepared lesson plan given the course materials and an assignment so that the needs of the students and the objectives of the lesson plan are then achieved. This is the part where you make that adaptation to a given lesson plan. You have to work around things sometimes. As an instructor one, before class, evaluate the conditions. Evaluate and look at the facilities for appropriateness. Is your classroom going to meet the needs of the student? Are we going to still meet standard operating procedures for who you're working for? Evaluate the students' limitations as well. A lot of this information we find out. We arrive early, or even the night before in some cases, and we look at the classroom, the equipment, we iron all that out, we learn how to use the equipment, we've got all that good to go. We look at any SOPs the department might have, or if it's your own department that you might need to meet, and then you think about your students. Are there going to be limitations? How would we overcome certain limitations if it became an issue? We modify the method of instruction and the course materials to meet the student's need. You might make adaptations due to the learning environment itself. The audience could be the capability of the facilities or the types of equipment that are available. You may be prepared for one type, but you have an older type of a piece of equipment. You got to re-evaluate and look at how that piece of equipment works, and then learn, is this or will this not help us in the class? Fire instructors twos are going to, they can modify the existing plans given the topic and characteristics and a lesson plan so that the JPRs for the topic are achieved. And the planning would include learning objectives, lesson outline, course materials, instructional aids, and a plan for evaluation. When we modify something, this is to make basic or fundamental changes. When we adapt, we are making something fit as for a specific or a new use or a different situation. Fire instructor level 2s can make basic fundamental changes, changing performance outcomes, rewriting learning objectives, if you will, and even modifying the lesson content. A fire instructor level 1 cannot make these changes. Fire instructor 1s are bound to and held accountable to the curriculum that they are currently using. So that brings us to, what can an instructor level 1 do? You can make lesson plans fit to the situation and the conditions. The NFPA states that a fire instructor 1 may modify a method of instruction and course materials to meet the needs of the student or to accommodate the instructor's style. Level of training: the instructor must only perform actions that are within their level of training. Instructor ones must recognize what they can and cannot do. Acting outside of training could lead to liability. Check with superiors if you're unsure. The basis is learn and know and have a certain expertise in the subject that you're going to teach or the skills that you're going to be demonstrating. If for some reason you don't know, then during the preparation phase is when you learn and you adapt to and figure those things out. Reviewing materials for adapting. As fire instructor ones, you can obtain lesson plan in many ways and review and identify the areas that need to be adapted. This must even review plans developed within our own department and any standards and procedures that change. Schedule the adaptations before delivering the plan to the class. Adaptations are necessary for many reasons. Learning environment itself, we may have to adapt and change things around. Certainly our audience may dictate changes. The capability of the facilities or the number of people the facilities may hold or accommodate certain skills, and the type of equipment that may be available. Your lesson plan may be adapted due to last-minute classroom or equipment type changes. Situations where all members of the audience do not come from one department and may not be familiar with particular pieces of equipment. They may using a prepared lesson plan from a source outside of your department. So we take into consideration of audience factors, prerequisite knowledge, and the abilities may be unknown. Evaluating our local conditions, focus on the minor adjustments to fit local conditions of our students' needs. The fire instructor level 1 should review the following questions when adapting a lesson plan to an audience. Which policies and procedures would apply, or how are they different here? What is the current level of knowledge and the ability of our students? And which tools and equipment will your students use to perform skills? Know yourself. What is your experience level and ability? Can you improve your knowledge and background through research and preparation? How familiar are you with the topic that will be presented or taught? Unfamiliarity can pose safety and credibility issues. And then think about what is your teaching style, and are you going to have to adapt that with the lesson plan according to your abilities? And I will say, going back to being unfamiliar, know ahead of time, prepare and review, take out unfamiliar territory. If there is something that you are not an expertise in and you have limited abilities, consider bringing a co-instructor in that does have those expertise to teach a segment for you as well. When we evaluate the facilities, review and adapt your lesson plan based on the facilities that we're going to use. This could include equipment that is available, student seating and how the seating is arranged, the size of the classroom, down to the lighting. Can we dim lighting to help with projectors? Or are we not allowed or not capable of dimming lighting, which would make a slide presentation very hard to read or look at? And then we want to think of any outside noise or environmental noise that could be a hindrance to the classroom. Meeting the needs of local SOPs, lesson plans must be reviewed to ensure that we're meeting and following local SOPs. We don't want to teach information that contradicts from SOPs or standing operating procedures. This could be confusing for students and it may create liability for an instructor. Oftentimes it is best to ask either the chief or assistant chief or even an officer of the department that you're presenting material to ahead of time, are there any standard operating procedures that we need to follow, especially when it comes to skills, the delivery of skills. And I'll say this, a lot of departments will have training ground SOPs. Some departments it is mandatory, for an example, that you have to wear helmet and gloves at all times when you're on the training grounds. Other levels of PPE will be required depending on what skills and what level of the skills that you are performing. When reviewing your lesson plan, make note of SOPs that may cover the topic. If you're not sure, if you're delivering for a neighboring department, ask those questions ahead of time. After reviewing your plan, research out SOPs and ensure no conflicts exist. If they do exist, then adapt your lesson plan to meet the local standard operating procedures. If you're not familiar with local operating procedures, find somebody that can assist you. Especially this comes into play when we are delivering content that will include skills where we are using that department's own equipment, where we're not bringing in our own equipment that we're familiar with, but we are using department equipment. Next is evaluating the limitations of the students. We want to review the lesson plan based on student limitations and then adapt if at all possible. So this could be up to the appropriate education level, and we may need to verify prerequisite knowledge and or skills. A lot of times this is handled by the leadership of the authority having jurisdiction. And what that means is there will either be a form or a checkoff sheet that is filled out by the chief or the training officer of that organization, for an example. This is filled out ahead of time. It is sent back to the lead instructor or the coordinator who is delivering the education, and that will be verification of the prerequisite knowledge and skills. Adapting our method of instructions. One area that an instructor may readily modify is your method of instruction. Your delivery may be needed to allow you to effectively deliver a certain lesson plan. It should not change the learning objectives. The same information is taught, they're just taught or delivered in a different format. Lesson plans may also be adapted to accommodate your style as an instructor. This often will reflect the style of an instructor who wrote or has written the lesson plan. During the review of the lesson plan, consider whether this plan fits your style of presentation. If it doesn't, then adapt but not change that, but adapt it to the fit your style of delivery. Next, we want to meet the needs of our students. All adaptations have one purpose, and that is to meet the needs of the students. The main goal is to provide instruction that allows our students to obtain knowledge or skills. We verify the goals after you review and adapt your lesson plan. So, as a fire service instructor who uses a well-prepared and thorough lesson plan to organize and prepare for class greatly increases the odds of ensuring that you have quality training, quality delivery. All of your instructional planning begins by identifying what the desired outcomes are, and we turn them into objectives. In the ABCD method, again, this is your audience, behavior, condition, and degree. This is your who, what, how or using what, and how well we do it. Lesson plans should include your title and topic, level of instruction, your behavioral objectives, performance objectives, and learning outcomes, the instructional materials that are needed, an outline of the overall lesson, any resource or reference material, and then a summarization of the lesson plan. Any other assignments in there as well. Four-step method again of instruction is preparation, presentation, application, and evaluation. As level 1 instructors, we can use a lesson plan to teach a class, and we may adapt that lesson plan to the local needs of the class. A fire instructor level 2 can create a new lesson plan to teach the class and may modify an existing lesson plan to meet those needs. A lesson plan must be reviewed to ensure that it meets your local SOPs. The method of instruction is the one area that a fire service instructor 1 may readily alter. So the gist is be prepared. When you're delivering lesson plans as an instructor level 1 in the fire service, study ahead of time, read over the lesson plan, figure out what you may or may not need. How are you going to adapt that plan to your audience? Any prerequisites that your audience may need as well. Figure these things out ahead of time. Know your equipment. And remember, it is not just about throwing a PowerPoint up on a projector, on a wall or a screen, and reading bullet points. Be prepared to expound on those bullet points. Deliver the material, deliver it by objective, be objective driven, and ensure that our folks, that our students, that we're meeting their needs and that they are receiving the material appropriately.